So besides the snow and cold and weather patterns, there's one more very important thing: dryness of air. And this is serious because this can make you sick. Let me explain. And it's not relative humidity. Relative humidity is very nice for indoor comfort. It doesn't really work outdoors. Indoors you might have a little instrument that tells you relative humidity is 30% or something like that, 32%, but that doesn't really work or relate to outdoors. The air here is very dry, the snow here is very dry, and instead of relative humidity, what matters is absolute humidity, not the relative one. And cold air can contain very, very little moisture. Here, look over here on the laptop, I've got some numbers here. You can see on this graph water vapor up top and temperature in Fahrenheit. It doesn't matter if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius. 30 degrees Fahrenheit is about 0 degrees Celsius, so you can see independent of or irrelevant of how much relative humidity you have at any given temperature, they are all plummeting down towards here, towards the zero here. This means here that at this room temperature, or okay, it's not room temperature, but at this temperature here, in over here you say this one says water vapor, pounds of water vapor per pounds of dry air. In a cubic foot of air, or in any amount of dry air, you have a certain amount of certain pounds. It's going to be ounces, but it's going to be a few ounces of water vapor. And as temperature goes down here, there's going to be less and less and less absolute ultimate water vapor in the air at any relative humidity. You can see this is 10, 20, 30, 40, up to 90% relative humidity. That's how this graph works. So it doesn't continue below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, because from then on it's not water vapor, it's the frozen floatses that you can see drifting across the terrain in front of dark background. So it's not water vapor, but it's still there in the air, frozen. This is maybe not a desert, but an arid area with not much precipitation. Is very dry here. The air is very dry. You can see across the air the floating ice crystals here. Ice floats is what I call these. You can see they are falling or moving across the lens here against the dark background. So it's not snowing at the moment. These aren't snowflakes. It's just any amount of moisture that's in the air just freezes immediately and drifts across. So how this affects you, that the air is really, really dry, is this: when you go outside, the first thing that you notice is you take 2 breaths of air or so, and you notice that the moisture, especially not so much in -20, that's okay, but shows up in the -20s, but especially below -25, and definitely at -30. You go outside, you take 2 breaths of air, and whatever moisture you have in your nose, it freezes to the inside of your nose. It feels like it dries your nose hairs together, but it shrinks and clings to the membrane there that lines your airways, and it contracts it and shrinks it, and the cold wicks away moisture from your nose. It dry freezes you, okay, even if you're just walking outside and you don't think about it so much. So your skin, if you have dry skin, it's gonna dry it. It's like you're gonna have freezer burn on yourself. So not only for the exposed skin freezes in, actually gets frostbitten in -30 degrees Celsius at about 10 minutes or so, seriously. So that's wind chill, without wind chill, whatever, it doesn't matter too much at this point. And so your skin dries out, your nose dries out, your throat dries out. If you're sensitive to upper respiratory illnesses and diseases for nose and throat stuff, you're gonna get sick in 3 days just from your nose and throat being dried out by the Arctic air with not even ounces of water vapor in it. No water vapor, nothing in it anymore. Okay, that extreme dry air that's how it's going to affect your health right away. So you might get a cold or a flu. It's not because you underdressed or you have cold fingers or cold toes or whatever, or because you're running outside and you're inhaling, like you go for play hockey, or you're snowshoeing and you're working real hard and you're breathing in and out and exchanging a lot of air, and that's gonna freeze your lung. But the problem is gonna be that it's not only gonna freeze your lung, it dries your lungs and it dries you out. So what I did, I had to adapt to the environment, and I had to pick up some new habits. I adopted the water drinking schedule of a pregnant woman. Basically, I was sipping water all the time, even if it's cold or whatever. Because my throat was always dry, and my skin isn't affected too much, but I did get a viral infection, some cold, I don't know, and I never went to see the doctor because it costs money and whatever, and it's just something viral, so they can't do anything about it. And it all was caused by just dry air, drying my throat and mouth and nose, and that's cracking your little membrane out microscopically that lines these airways, and infections take root in these microscopic surfaces here, and your immune system will be the one losing. Okay, so take that into consideration: dryness of air on your skin, on your upper airways, and how it leads to infections. Alright, one strategy I use to counter the lack of moisture in the air is this: I use the moisture in the bathroom to humidify the air in the whole suite. I didn't pack a humidifier, I didn't have a tea kettle to use, and I didn't want to babysit the stove or hot top to evaporate some water into the air. So I used just the natural process, the natural moisture amount, whatever was in the generated on a daily basis in the bathroom, and I didn't use the ceiling fan. I intentionally not used the ceiling fan, whereas this is my normal bathroom at home, one of them I use, and usually it needs to be dried with fans meticulously, because wet stuff stays wet for days, moldings peel off, and floors rot, and so it's just bad for the walls and everything. Here we have swimming pool gear and everything, and fans everywhere to dry the room. In the Arctic, the opposite was the problem. Here we have fans running, drying shoes, because everything is wet. There's another fan there, it's usually here. Wet gear enters the front door and usually needs to be dried in this space as soon as they are in. In the Arctic, the opposite was the problem: lack of moisture instead of excess moisture. So that's why instead of packing a humidifier or babysitting the stove for boiling off pot of water or whatever, I just used the bathroom's moisture to humidify the air. So that made my throat work a lot more, and it may also work for you to prevent some respiratory illnesses or to prevent dryness of skin, together with lotions and skin moisturizers, whatever works. You might find that this works certainly easier than packing a humidifier with you. For the rest of the footage, it's a long video now. For the rest of the footage here, I've got the pictures that I took outside on the Northern Lights, or Aurora Borealis if you like Latin, This is not a National Geographic level photography. I was just experimenting. Okay, you can see in some of the pictures that the buildings appear to be pink. They are not actually pink, they're white buildings, but it's a little chromatic. It's a camera's problem, okay? And that it's dark and I had to hold it still and I didn't have a tripod, and so okay. So enjoy the pictures. It's about 2 seconds each. Thank you very much for watching.